Getting a little bit of a late start here for this stream. Probably because no idea. But this is just one of those fun conversations we have every time Apple does a big announcement day. If you don't know, in about an hour and a half, they're doing one of their events where they're going to talk about the new iPhones, and we'll get the release date of the new operating systems, which are all nearly complete. They've been working on those for a long time now with betas, and so it's finally time. And of course, anytime we get a new iOS, iPadOS now, and OS 10, that means we get something new with Logic, right? Maybe not today or this week, but certainly at some point. They usually tie in new features to their operating systems, and so we're on the verge, on the cusp of getting some new updates. So we get together and we talk, and we say, what is it that we like from the last few versions, and what is it that we still want? So that's what we're going to do today, is talk a little bit about the state of Logic and Logic Pro for iPad, and by association, probably GarageBand for iOS and the GarageBand for OS 10. They're all related products in many ways. So, what is it? That's for you to put in the chat some of the things you're thinking about, and of course I'll talk about some of the stuff as well. I did a stream last week about the drummer, explaining the drummer and talking about some of the things I wish the drummer could have. We didn't get to quite everything in that stream. We almost did. It was a good stream, so go check it out if you're looking for some additional drummer stuff. The problem is, with a channel like this, we get new people joining the channel all the time, and so we do regurgitate a little bit, but it's extra bad when it comes to the drummer because it hasn't changed really in a couple of years now. And so that's one of the things I'm hoping for. I'm very practical. I can make all of the other functional features work for me, and I can change my workflow a little bit as needed. But things like the drummer, which has the potential to be so amazing and yet has stagnated, is something frustrating. And LA Winter is talking about the user interface. Maybe it will be like iOS Logic. I don't know. I was thinking about this today a little bit. My thoughts were, right this moment, we have GarageBand for iOS and iPadOS. And GarageBand, in those formats, while feature limited, doesn't do everything Logic does, fits on an iPhone screen, right? Teeny little screen. They've made it work, and they've hardly changed it since it first came out. They've added some stuff, sure, and they've certainly tweaked, but they really figured it out the first time. They spent a lot of time on it. Making that work in that format means that it's possible, right? It's certainly possible to do something with Logic on an iPhone. And all the other stuff is going to point to that, I think, today with the announcements of the iPhone 15, which is going to have the USB-C port, which is going to be super beneficial for those of us who want to use mobile tech, right? Because that format allows for some additional features over the Lightning format. And so we do have some hardware things that are going to be updated in terms of the iPhone, which means the power is going to easily be there, the processing power, and actually the physical power of the battery is going to, that doesn't change all that much over the years, but the way we can use it more with different connectors is enhanced. So it's just the screen size and fitting everything onto a screen. Well, they showed us with Logic Pro for iPad that they didn't mind gutting Logic, right? They cut out a bunch of things for that particular version. And I'm sure since they released it, they've been, because it says in the user agreement that they can track everything you do on Logic Pro for iPad, all the usage. It might be anonymous, but that doesn't matter to them in this case. They're going to look and see which features are the most used and which ones are the least used. Of course, anything that's not there at all, they can't rate or measure, but everything else they can. So they're going to say, ooh, everyone talks about how they want all these drummers, but, they're not even using the drummer track. Or on the flip side, they're going to say, wow, we didn't realize that the drummer was going to be used this much. So let's really add some stuff to it. So I like the data-driven nature of Apple on one hand, but that just means that it might not line up with my own personal usage. Hi, everybody in the chat. Daryl and Yelan, I saw that you posted before we even started. I don't use that particular feature, the print to clip, but I know every feature that people want, I wish they would do. Daryl says drag and drop audio and MIDI. They do have a bunch of drag and drop functionality, not as much as a few other workstations, but they do have some. Jim Nim says, hey back. And then of later features, I love MIDI settings on track. Okay, cool. Ellie Winter says they will probably add the new rhythm and pitch machine. Hopefully, stuff like that will get added. And then Jim Nim says, I would love the whole track header to be colored, not just a small band on it. That makes sense. And then RZ Purple Haze says, hello, hi. Keep the comments coming. That's why we're doing this. I'm curious to see what you're all thinking. I know what I'm thinking, but it's like I'd love to see more of what you're hoping for. Obviously, any new releases that are coming shortly are already figured out, right? Apple has already sorted those decisions in advance. They don't just react to things unless there's a big problem. They're planners. And so that part, we'll just have to wait and see what they decided. And hopefully it lines up with what we want. But I haven't yet. And this is my own personal views, obviously, but I haven't yet found another workstation that does everything that I would want to do better than Logic. And that's probably like a 3-prong approach to that, right? It's features. They have got most of the standard features that everybody has. I said most, not all. So in terms of features, I'm pretty happy with Logic. Regardless of the speed of updates, in the last couple of years, they've added a lot of the things that I care about, which should have been there in the beginning, but they weren't, and then they added them. So, for instance, instrument tracks and MIDI tracks, being able to assign them to ports and MIDI channels for the inputs especially. That was something we didn't have. The record functionality on each of the MIDI-enabled tracks, all of those things are things that I've really enjoyed them adding. And then, probably the other thing that's split into a couple of subtopics would be, one, they haven't charged for any of the updates. I know they're charging us for the iPad version. And I'm super frustrated with the iPad version that I pay for on a monthly basis. I went for the monthly instead of the yearly because then I can just be like, you know what? I'm not really using it. I know I paid for a year, but I still have paid less than the yearly amount, so I can cancel and save some money. But it was my understanding that a subscription model that we pay for every month would have some sort of updates. Since they've released it, there's been this many updates that I know of, unless they released one this morning or yesterday and I just haven't seen it. So 0 updates on that. And if they're just waiting for the operating systems to come up before they release it, then we're looking at a very slow update cycle on that thing, even though we pay for it every month on a monthly basis. Okay, some more stuff come in. Chord track would be nice. Cool. I don't think most people need a chord track like they have in like Studio One or something, but it is a nice feature for sure. Let's see. Logic definitely needs more nesting regarding track stacks. They kind of added one layer of nesting with it, which I'm not a big track stack user for most things. Every once in a while I'm doing some instrument creation where I'm like taking 3 or 4 different sounds and putting them into one instrument to make a new mega instrument, and then I use track stacks for that. But I know a lot of people who use those or would like to use them more for like full on track template organization and whatnot, and that's not how my brain works personally. So it's like I don't know why they just added one layer, except so that they could take the instruments that are built with stacks, like the drum machine designer and the producer kits of the drummer, and then make those embeddable in other stacks. So they just made one additional layer, but if they're going to do one additional, why not do infinite additional, you know? I don't know. Why would we want that is another question. Sometimes we want things to be 1,000% flexible, but only use 1% of the end result, and I think that's not healthy either, personally. Let's see. Fuit says, I will love Logic to have macro commands like Studio One, where you can assign a bunch of commands to one command. That was such a traditional way of thinking for computing, and even with Apple, to have macro commands on things, that I'm frankly surprised we don't. But there you have it. We don't. I doubt at this point. Although with something like those little panels on iPad version of Logic, where you have like one little panel, or smart controls on the OS X version, I mean, those are like a macro way of thinking where one control knob can control multiple things. It's just not the traditional way of having a key command that does multiple things. And so there's that. Let's see. Input monitoring button on MIDI tracks for those who use external sequencers. Interesting. Yeah. That plays into the discussion of what things are missing that we already have, but just are limited to one area, right? And that would be, for instance, MIDI effects. It's like there are some MIDI effects that would make perfect sense on audio tracks. The modulator controlling the effects on audio tracks. That would not be, in my brain, hard to implement. Easier than some of the things they have implemented. So why not just do it? I would use them instantly. Let's see. Composite says, I'm working in video game. I need better export tools. Yeah. Logic Pro has the worst export tools. I'm being honest with that. They're not great compared to other workstations. For instance, if we bounce this bad boy, just as an idea of where we're still at, right? PCM, which means something to some of us. Most new users are still learning some of the lingo, might not understand what PCM even is. MP3, it's like we still do MP3. M4A, and then CD, DVD with a DVD audio format. I mean, okay, we're still in, let me see, the last time I bought a DVD audio was probably 2005 or something crazy. I mean, that format has been gone for so long. They haven't changed this at all. So I agree with the export options needing to be updated badly. Daryl says Ghost Notes similar to FL Studio. I do like the Ghost Notes options. I do similar workarounds in Logic using the MIDI editor where you can select multiple regions and have things pop up, but it's nowhere as useful as the ghost notes. Ellie Winter says, MIDI through is on my wish list. I mean, anybody who says MIDI through and knows what it means these days are a friend of mine, so we're good. Also, Elon says, I would love to have an input monitor. Okay, I already saw that. All around MIDI implementation. Okay, so Composite says, all around MIDI implementation, which is not only limited to the channel used, but connects everything to anything like you can do in Bitwig. Bitwig is a cool piece of software if you've never used it, anybody, but you kind of like the Ableton way of thinking, right? Though that's kind of where that grew out of. I was an early beta tester for Bitwig, and their whole thing was flexibility. That's not what Logic's thing is. Logic's thing is not saying we're the most flexible. So if you need flexibility, you need to go to someplace like Bitwig or Reaper. Right now, we could get flexibility on every workstation, but that just doesn't seem to be the priority right now. Bitterman says, one thing I need that nobody needs is the stereo amp designer to have a mix knob. So I think the mix knob, and if I understand what you're talking about, so we have this like in Studio One, where you can do parallel processing of plugins in the additional plugin. We have it in Logic, kind of, if you use Wave plugins, because we have, I don't have it in right now. That's weird. Okay. There is like the rack plugin from Waves where you can do this with all of the Waves plugins in some third-party VST3s. Where you can say, I want this plugin and I want to split it out and do a mix knob on that plus the original, or you can do it like a frequency split for each of them. So you could just process the high frequencies or the mid frequencies or the low frequencies for any plugin. And I would love to see that in Logic, being able to have way more control over some of the processing signal chains. Yuri says, thoughts on Logic Pro for iPad? I think it's a great first beta, and there's a lot of promise. The fact that they even released it is very promising, but I have a lot of views on how to make it better. So many views. I think they need, the simple way to do this would be to sacrifice control over some of the parameters, but have them all under the hood. So that means Logic for OS X and Logic for iPad would be identical in terms of feature sets. Just not everything could be controlled on the iPad. That would simplify the interface. So I could take a project from my desktop, every single thing that I would ever use on there, except for maybe spatial audio. I'm okay not having spatial audio, but everything else, open up on the iPad, and it would all be there. Like the groove track and the notation, maybe. All of that stuff would be available in terms of functionality. Maybe couldn't control it all, but then do some of my mixing and music creation and adding things, recording, bring it back to my desktop, and then have still everything there to continue working on more of the fine-tuned things. Right now, they've sacrificed some features. You can't even open a project on one if it doesn't have the right setup. So I think there's some limitations I would love to get back. I'm a little bit behind now, but Jim Nim says if the library on the left could contain VST and not only Apple's proprietary content, I don't care about that as much. I think the more open we make it, the more problems we're going to have personally. Not guaranteed, but it sure feels that way. Yuri says, I just need to record my vocals and mix them. As iPad Logic have enough features? Yes, it definitely does. And then Neelan says, how quickly do you move to new OS on your main machine? For me, I move to it the day it comes out. But that's because I have a backup machine if I need to, that I keep on a previous thing as a backup. But I make sure I don't have any client projects the week that they're releasing it. I'm a teacher for the most part, so most of my day-to-day work is at the university. And so that's like a PowerPoint presentation, that's fine. And then we have school, university, studios that all are very closely monitored for versioning, and they never go to the new thing until we know everything works. But my own personal main computer, I go right away because I'm making videos for all of you, so you can all see the terror that I'm going through, right? Jamal says ramp up the loop browser. I agree. Could use an upgrade. It's been the same for like a decade. LA says, I would love to be able to load plugin via preset. Right now you can, if that is the only plugin on the channel. I think the iPad version actually has some stuff like that. I haven't really done that loading part yet either. I always create almost everything from scratch. And then if I pull something, I'll use it from another project. Like I'll have a project that has a lot of things in it that I just created. And then I'll use the project browser to pull tracks in from it, from other things. Let's see. Fuit says snap to scale in MIDI editor where you can insert or drag notes on only in scale. Well, there's something similar to that, but it's not exact, I don't think. Let's see. LA says, I just went full Melda and now I'm amazed by how advanced spectral features they have had for a long time. Cool. RZ Purple Haze, need more power to MIDI effects, no modulation effects for, yeah, I said that already, but I agree 100%. And then Jamal says improve logic remote. It's actually pretty good and reliable, but there's always room for improvements, I believe. Justin says, when do you think the big update in Logic Pro is going to come? Oof. I think it's going to blow all your minds. And it's going to be one of those ones that the iPad version and the desktop version, finally, it becomes clear what Apple really wants to do, which is make one version that's not either of those exactly, but something in the middle. We'll see when. This fall, for sure, I think. We're at that point. But they've really slowed down their big updates and made most of them incremental because of backlash. They want you to love them, not hate them. Let's see. I would love to see a few features like safety limiter or clipping added to channels. Yeah, that would make sense. And then Bitamin says, Afuit, I love that. Is there a way to make the piano roll in Logic not show any notes out of scale? I feel like there is. I think there is. I'll look in just 1 second. And then also gain compilation on the track level or compensation. I think it's time for Apple to start putting some more useful tools that other companies are calling AI, but Apple will never call AI. They'll just call it machine learning, or they'll call it smart design, because Apple doesn't want us to think that something else is helping us. They're the ones helping us. Apple's responsible for all the good things in our lives. They don't want AI to take any credit for that. So even if they use something similar to AI, it's not going to be called that. Which is similar to, what we just got with the pitch corrector. One of our last updates added in neural pitch detection, right? This thing. They snuck that in really quietly. And it's akin to like machine learning AI, but they'll never call it that. They're going to slip it in and call it neural something, right? It's our brains. That's what we think of. We think of our brains that just did that. It sounds amazing, by the way. So that's great. Some hopes on the chat that the Mac version won't get dumbed down. It's going to, but it's time. Don't don't think of maybe, hopefully they'll do it right. If I were in charge, I would dumb down a number of things. I would dumb down some things because right now it's too bloaty. It's like everyone complains that it's like a little bit of a behemoth, slow, and problems with the CPU. But at the same time, they're like, but don't take anything away from this. And then I'm sure the programmers are like, pick. Do you want this to be agile or bloaty? Agile or have everything under the sun? But there's ways to get rid of some of the features that maybe aren't as useful, you know? If they streamline the library and made it super intuitive and useful, they could put like all of the loops that they have in one place and not have two different search things on either side of the screen. And then the list just goes on from there, right? It's just like thing after thing that they could optimize and streamline and make it better. And if there's no evidence yet that Logic Pro on the desktop will be subscription. But something interesting Pro and Final Cut Pro. And that is, they're like the first, right? The first of the Apple apps that really just like had been buy once and free for like a decade. And then they became subscription models with the new version. They didn't do that with Keynote or Pages or Numbers or iMovie or GarageBand. So, maybe that was the tipping point. I'm sure there's a team that's carefully watching to see the reactions of it. And they're also saying, well, people complained, but here's how many people signed up and it made them, $1 million. Not $1 million, whatever. Some amount of money that they determine as the threshold. Then all of a sudden they're like, okay, let's do this with the full version next. If they do that, they better also like make some improvement that's worth doing. They better buy like UAD and Focusrite and something else. And then all of a sudden we get all of those tools at once. All of the, it's like they bought, buy propeller head or something stupid like that. And then all of a sudden they put a $5 price tag on it every month. And everyone's like, I could do that. It's like they're going to have to make it worth it. Right this moment, the iPad version of Logic is not worth it. But it is worth it for me to use it, to get to know it and see where it can fit. And I did I've done recording sessions on it now with just that and an interface. And it was really pleasantly, surprisingly nice. So Bitterman says, Logic has scale quantized in the piano roll. It works, but it doesn't hide the keys that aren't in the scale. So let's just look at that for 1 second because sure. I'm trying to think of how, because this button right here, once you have notes, it hides everything except for the notes that are in your thing. That one right there. So, but I don't think there's a way that I remember. Yeah, so that's what I mean. There's like alternate ways of doing it a little bit. So right, so yeah, I could come in and scale quantize to a scale. That does that. I can hit this button here that says collapse mode, and it just shows me all the notes I have on there. But none of them are just like locked to a scale, if that makes sense. There's no way just to view that like we might in other places. Now, ironically, iPad version of Logic, I believe, can just do it all with the scale, because they'll give you a little MIDI keyboard that just has the scale on it. And I think it'll just show you that as well. So cool. And Ellie Winter says the computers themselves are like subscriptions in themselves. For the longest time, that's what I would say. And I'm surprised that they've actually gone to the pay for a Logic Pro for iPad, because the iPads are not cheap and they don't last forever. I mean, not really. All you have to do is add like 4 more massive features to each version of that thing, and then people are going to be buying new iPads, right? It's like they're behind the cycle, so my iPad's going to run Logic Pro for a few versions. And then one day they're going to release something and I'm going to be like, oh, I need the new iPad, because it doesn't work like that on it. So it's cool. And let's see, is there a way to stack up snares, drums, hits inside drummer? I mean, there's always a way to do everything. To stack them up inside, though, to add like an additional snare, no, not exactly inside the drummer itself. But if I was really trying to do something where I was doubling a snare, then I would just do a second drummer track or a second instrument track, load up the drum kit designer or something, right? Once I have my MIDI set up, or approximately, we just option click that down. It turns it into MIDI, and then I can just like get rid of everything else super easy. And then that just becomes another snare that's layered in with the original. So that took me all of 4 seconds, right? I mean, that wasn't a long process to just get another drummer track that you can put any snare you want on it. If you want to do drum kit designer, though, man, you'd have to load the different kits, or you could load up Ultra Beat and use that, or, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Apple and none of the people there typically watch YouTube live streams, as far as I can tell, ever. Someone's just commented about that. And actually, this video is took me a minute to get it going today because of some technical thing with my streaming tools. But we're only going to be going about 3 more minutes. It's a shorter stream. I just wanted to get you all thinking about this. And then as you watch the keynote in an hour, let's pay attention to clues. I might do another stream this afternoon just to see if they talk about anything audio music related that was useful for Logic, then we'll be doing another stream later this afternoon. And so with that, any last thoughts, let me know in the chat. I'm looking to see if I missed anything. Nope, doesn't look like I missed that much. There's a couple I just glossed over. Thanks so much for everybody who's like chatting in there. I mean, that's a good conversation. That's the best part of these streams, is hearing your thoughts and seeing what you're interested in and what you're facing. That's the best part of all of this for me. But without any additional comments, if you are around later this afternoon, we may pop on another stream just to do a recap of any Logic-related announcements. Otherwise, hope you have a great day, and we'll catch you on the flip side.